Hi, this is Nick Forster. Every week on the air, we recognize someone our listeners have told us about, folks who are stepping up in their own communities or beyond and making a positive impact. We do this not only to share these inspiring stories with listeners like you, but to remind us that so often, even in the face of big problems, little steps can lead to great results. It's the eChievement Award. Welcome, William. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure and an honor.
So Helen mentioned you got a full-time practice here in the States, but you feel the urge to give back, and you got into doing it in this particular way.
Yeah, I think we're pretty fortunate. So about 26 years ago, my wife and I got involved in a project in Arusha. It was easy to get involved with because the gentleman that ran the hospital was actually from my hometown back in Minnesota. And it took us a while with other groups to raise money to build the operating rooms. And once we did, then I started going over.
So had he set it up first, and then you raised some money together, and then sort of
Right.
established this
He had
practice?
set up the hospital,
Yeah.
and was running it, but it didn't really have an operating room. And since I'm a surgeon, I kind of need an
And it
operating
needed
room.
one, yeah.
So
How did he or you pick that place in Tanzania?
I picked it just because Dr. Jacobson was living there. I mean, he's made a lifelong commitment to providing services in northern Tanzania.
Yeah, and but of course the need is global. So the opportunity to make a difference there is as real and as urgent as in many places, I suspect.
It is. At the time, it was one of the poorest countries in the world, with a high infant mortality,
Yeah.
and kids would die from not having a cleft palate repaired.
Oh, so these surgeries are life-changing, life-threatening, in fact, these ailments.
Right. It's a society where if you have a facial difference or some difference like a burn, or if you're crippled, you're hidden out. And some of these kids, I think infanticide is still practiced.
Wild. Because it's a burden on the family to be able to maintain the health of somebody who can't pull their own weight.
It's a very strenuous environment that they live in.
And the kids are stigmatized if they have a deformity.
They are.
Yeah. And so when you first got there and you saw the potential to make this difference, were you aware of the fact that this was a life and death difference in some cases?
Yeah, we knew that kids with a cleft palate, for instance, suffer from malnutrition at a higher rate than other children.
Because as infants, it's harder for them to nurse, or what's the
It is. They can't really latch onto the breast, and this is not a society where the average person can go out and buy a bottle to feed their child.
It's wild. So you're able to make a huge difference in the lives of these kids. And what other procedures do you do?
Well, the average person lives in a hut and cooks on the floor of their hut, and they actually have a fire in the hut without a chimney. So there are a lot of burns because kids will fall into the fire, and kids can have seizures just because of malaria, which is endemic over there. And the conventional wisdom is that you don't touch a child that's having a seizure. So these kids can basically fall into a fire and cook.
Oh, wow.
So it's awful.
Wow. So you have less of an opportunity to make an immediate impact in a situation like that, I
Right.
suspect. Yeah. And so you mentioned that there's a hospital and now it has an operating room.
Now we have two hospitals.
Oh, two hospitals.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we have one, the older one is just outside of Arusha.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have one downtown Arusha. So
And is there a group of doctors now who are working in these facilities?
they have local doctors,
Yeah.
and some volunteers, and then our group comes in.
Yeah. And how often do you go there?
So we go 2 or 3 times a year,
Yeah.
just over the last 20-some years. So
That's wild. And there's does the community recognize you and recognize the work that you've done when you go there, when you arrive?
yeah, they know that our group is coming.
Yeah.
The hospital knows because they know that they'll work harder. So.
And so you said you've been doing this for 20 years, right?
Correct.
And how many procedures have you done? How many kids have you helped, do you think, along the way?
Somewhere around 3,000.
3,000 surgeries.
Yeah.
Wild.
But that's with my group.
Yeah.
And it's still not enough.
Yeah, It's. Do you ever have an opportunity to follow up with any of the kids you've worked on and find out what happens?
We do. So we have a rehab center where most of the children will stay until they're ready to go back to home, which for most of them is the bush. And so some children will stay there for a year or so. If we're going to do staged procedures every 6 months,
Yeah.
they'll stay there. So we do get good follow-up on
Yeah, particularly the burn victims, I imagine.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow, it's a remarkable thing. And again, I just am impressed by the fact, William, that you're a guy who has a business and a family and a practice, and you have all the trappings of, your success as a guy who set out and educated himself and went to medical school and did all the stuff. And it's not that you're not doing good work in your day-to-day job,
No.
but you found a way to really make life different in profound ways for people who would never have an opportunity to visit someone like you.
Right.
And so it must be incredibly, in some ways, you're getting a lot while you're giving anyway.
Yeah, our group definitely gets more than we give, I think.
That's wild. And how do you fund your trips, your airfare and your transportation and your lodging?
We fund those privately. We fund them ourselves.
Wow.
And then we raise money to provide other things. So we scavenge a lot of equipment from hospitals and ship it over.
Yeah.
So that we have really what we'd use last week.
Right. Is it the kind of thing that you see growing and expanding into other facilities as time goes on?
We do. That's our plan as our group matures.
You're so relaxed about all this, William, but it's pretty damn impressive. I mean, I think it's remarkable what you're doing. Is there a website if anybody wants to learn? Yeah, absolutely.
Our website is currently in evolution. They keep saying that. So it's One World Medical Relief. And you can find us on Facebook, too.
oneworldmedicalrelief.org.
Incorporated.
Oh,
Yeah.
but there's a website, people can just search for it.
Right.
One World Medical Relief. And do you have pictures and stuff like that up there on the
We
website?
do.
Yeah. Well, again, I can tell you're a seasoned professional and you're doing amazing work. So thanks for sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
It's Dr. William Brown, the winner of this week's eChievement Award, performing life-saving surgeries for kids in Tanzania, making a huge difference quietly. Thank you. Congratulations.